All right, welcome back to the channel. And this brief review, kind of first impressions, maybe is more the way to think of it, related to Warhammer Kill Team. Late this night, you're seeing this probably pretty early because it was rather late in the evening when we did this, and I wanted to have this out, and I figured if I kind of keep this simple, this isn't the teach you how to play. I would like to do one of those, but I ain't got time to do that right now because we don't get things early, so I kind of have to wait till very, very late at night to get things. But have a copy of the book, have a copy of the cards as well. Got a chance to play the very first game late this evening. I was playing my Warp Coven, which is Thousand Suns. You can take some Zangors as well, but I don't bother taking any Zangors. Don't own any, don't really care about any. Maybe some other time. Against a friend of the show, Dan. Not the main Dan, but our other friend Dan. He and I'm supposed to actually show him Conquest one of these days, but actually I was on his Twitch channel, which I'll put a link to in the show notes related to this, where we played some Halo Fleet battles back from way back when Spartan games was still a thing before they tanked, and it was roughly exactly after that happened. But me and him played a game. He played his Angels of Death, so essentially he played Space Marines. I played Evil Space Marines, or Chaos Space Marines. And we went at it that way. So in this, this is not going to be a teach you how to play video. I would like to do one of those, but I need a little bit more time to do that. This is going to be just initial first impression, thoughts on it. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the good and the bad related to this new edition of Kill Team. For clarity, I did play a little bit of the previous edition, not very much of it. And I'll be honest, it was okay. We actually filmed the battle report, but we had some issues with some audio, so I didn't end up releasing it. But from what I recall, it was fine. Nothing really to write home about. I don't honestly remember really enjoying it that much. And what's odd is I can't tell you exactly why I didn't enjoy it. I just know I didn't. So nothing too great to write home about there. But so we have our book. When you go through the book, you have, obviously in the beginning, they tell you all kinds of bits. They give you the reasons why you're going to be playing. Then they give you the rules about playing, and then they tell you the missions and all the sorts of things after it. So, I said the Dark Imperium part is reasonably short for this particular book. Rules are not, overall, really that many pages. The core rules take about 10 pages. And then after that is the different principles, which take about another 10 pages, so about 20 pages total of rules. And there's a good amount, the way the GW does the books now, where there's a good amount of white space, especially because they put a lot of notes here on the side. They put a lot of information there. After that, they give you some missions. So let's go through some of the good. We'll start with just the game itself, and then we'll talk about the book in a moment. So for the game itself, one, I do think it's fun. I know fun is a subjective thing, and I'm going to try to quantify this in a useful way. The reason I found overall this to be fun is I find that it's just enough 40k to scratch the itch in a little bit of a different way. The game doesn't feel like 40k per se, but it's 40k models, it's 40k terrain. The rules are a little, the rules are different, of course. The special rules are a bit different, but you kind of have an idea of what they should do if you do play 40k and all of that. The factions feel like what they say they should, so it definitely feels in this grimdark world. But you can get it done in a lot faster time. I would say for our game tonight, to play the full game, and that counts getting set up, going through that, taking it one step at a time, reading through our mission thing to make sure we're doing exactly what we're supposed to do at every moment. And honestly, we had kind of looked through the rules real fast, but other than looking through the rules real fast, didn't really know much about it. We were done within 2 hours, and that was, the first play when you don't know what you're doing. That's actually really, really good. I remember back when I first learned 40k, it was 4 or 5 hours for that very first game. We weren't even playing 2k. A lot of times the very first games take much longer. This one did. Now if we go back and do it again, it's going to be a lot faster. So it gives you the taste into the world that you want without taking forever lingering around, or without having to move tons of models, tons of units, tons of measurements, tons of dice rolls. It shrinks it all down and puts it to a much more distilled experience. And that, for me, I did greatly enjoy. Second thing, it's like I said, it's pretty quick once you learn your faction. We found that by the end, spoiler alert for the game, again, not that this is going to be released. We are going to do some battle reports and all. I do want to do some of those soon, but just didn't want to do one tonight. Just didn't have things set up for it. I did end up winning, and I had more models left near the end, but even then, by a little bit near the end, we kind of figured out what we were supposed to do. We kind of figured out the rules at that point. I kind of understood the way my faction played. He understood the way his faction should play. And by about the fourth turning point, we were actually just kind of going right through it. Okay, hey, I know what strategic ploys I'm doing. I know these sorts of things. Okay, I know the sort of stats of my models. I know the types of weapons they have. I know all these bits. It took a bit to get there. When you think about, say, the equipment, okay, now I understand my equipment. I know what that's doing for me. After a while, the game definitely sped up quite a bit, and it felt, at least that part of it, I'll get into a negative of this in a little while, but at least that part of it made a lot of sense. I felt like now, if I were to have time to play another game, and I had to rush home and very late at night and do all this, if I had time to play another game, I don't think I would have reference back very much. Little bits, but we'll get into those. Third good differentiation between the factions. So a way to highlight this, there were some other people who had either through things we had watched or talked about it, or when they released the rules, kind of looking through all of that, we saw that I feel the factions have a good bit of difference to them. When you look at, say, both of us, we were doing Space Marines effectively. Good or bad Space Marines, but Space Marines. And even then, the two factions had quite a bit of difference. We had the same basic core rule. Space Marine core rule is essentially two parts. You can have other things. Your basic core rule is that you're allowed to shoot or close combat twice. But if you have a cool special weapon, usually in shooting, so if you're Space Marine, a heavy bolter, for me, it was essentially some cannons and other stuff like that. But if you have that, your second attack takes 2 action points to do. So essentially, Space Marine is 3 action points. Pretty much all Space Marines are 3 action points, at least as far as I've seen. Which means if you want to double shoot, say with a heavy bolter, it's going to take all 3 of your action points. So you better not try moving first. The other part is that you can react no matter what type of order you're under, whether you're essentially in cover or not, or cover or not. Trying to remember the exact word there. Engage and conceal. So they can react even when concealed, because normally if you're concealed, you generally cannot be shot at. Essentially, you have to be outside of cover and visible. If you're in cover, even visible, then they cannot shoot you, but you're not allowed to shoot, not allowed to charge. You are not allowed to counteract as well, or react. But even with that, even with us both playing Space Marine, our weapons were different. Even though we both have bolters, our bolters act a little different. We found that our heavy weapons are reasonably similar, but the people carrying them are not. Both saves, moves, all that sort of thing. My big thing with my Rubric Marines is we have 2-up saves. We have 2-up saves, and I missed this entirely. I'll be honest. In the beginning, I thought just everything was saving on 4s. I missed that we are 2-up saves on our basic Rubric Marines because we're a bunch of dust inside. You can't really harm a timekeeper kind of thing, like an hourglass, just by shooting it with a bullet. Where his were a bit different. He had combat doctrine, so he was able to select multiple special rules. So makes sense. Hey, you come to the battle. Oh, I'm facing this sort of army. I'm playing Eldar. Oh, I really need to be careful about in combat. Okay, I can give myself a rend. Oh, I need to be a little bit better in shooting. Oh, they're really good at getting bonuses from cover. Oh, I can deny their cover. They have a lot more flexibility where we have that sort of implacable advance. So even though our base stats are very, very similar, both the war gear we have, what our equipment is, and our special rules related to our models do make it feel rather different. So, and now I haven't read through every single faction, but I've been in some groups as soon as it came out that we've exchanged like 1,000 messages. So I know there's a lot of that. So there's a lot of nice differentiation. Nice thing number 4, game is exceptionally deadly. That's actually a lot of fun for me. I do play Battletech. I enjoy Battletech, but Battletech, unless you get a lucky strike, you could be sitting there for an hour and not too much happening. This game, so I said Space Marines had the ability to shoot twice effectively. He shot At one point, he shot twice at one of my Rubric Marines, took the guy right off the board. The first shot didn't quite do it, had a little bit of health left, boom, hit me with the second one, I'm gone. And that was a big trade back and forth for both of us. For the particular mission we played, it was a little complicated. We missed the little things here and there. We know we made mistakes. I'm sure later I'll think of other mistakes made. But with all of that, models don't stick around for very long. I mean, we're talking about Space Marines, which tend to have the most wounds, most survivability. We also have the fewest models, but everyone else who has like these 8, 9, 10 models, yeah, they have like 9 wounds. We're sitting on like 14. We were like 3 up saves, or 2 up in my case for a lot of my stuff. They're on like 4s or maybe 5. So things don't tend to last very long. There's things like devastating. If you get a critical to hit, which is naturally on a 6, there is ways to make it better. Lethal essentially makes you critical to hit. So 6s effectively always hit, 1s always miss. 6s are critical. That means you get the better damage category. And you might get some other special rules. Like my weapons had base devastating. Devastating 1, which means, oh, if I roll a 6, then I cause 1 damage before we go and take a look at the actual weapon doing its damage. So we were finding, when you start volleying at each other, models are going down real, real fast. To me, that is definitely a plus. That's a lot of fun. One, you need to be the right type of person who isn't trying to hold themselves to, this is my favorite model, and this is, this person, I named him, and all that kind of stuff. No, he's probably just going to be gone. Someone's going to shoot him. He's gone. But have fun with that. I do find that fun. I know there's some discussion of GW trying to make this their actual tournament game. 40K is not a tournament game. AOS is not a tournament game. You can play tournaments with it, but the rule set and their design structure is not tight enough for that, realistically. I've heard that that's what they want to do with this. I could care less. I'm just having fun shooting and watching stuff get annihilated very quickly. Last thing I'm going to mention in terms of the good, because again, this is my overall impressions having read through this book for about 20 minutes, or maybe a little bit longer, and then playing a quick game, and then running home and doing this, is the variety of missions. So the way the game is structured, when you go to sit down and play the game, you are going to put together 3 things to figure out the way in which you're going to score your points. You are going to put together, I just want to make sure that I use the right terminology here, your tactical operation. So if you notice on your different kill teams, every one of them lists 2 types of tacticals that they have. So like mine was security and recon. So there's 3 of each of those. So there are 3 objectives of security. There are 3 objectives of recon. I take those 6 things and I pick one of those to do. So in particular, the one I picked was contain. So for contain, as it says, starting on the second turning point, you don't score in the first. That's not unsurprising for a 40K based thing. But starting in the second turning point, if the enemy is not in your deployment zone, gain a point. If they're more than 6 inches outside of that deployment zone, gain another point. This is max of 6 points. If you think about it, you're scoring it for up to 3 turns, could get up to 2 points a turn, 6 points. So you pick a tactical mission. You pick a critical mission. The critical mission is what the 2 of you are going to be doing for the game. And that is shared between both sides. For that, in particular, we had extraction. The way extraction worked is essentially there were 3 objectives on the board. You could spend 1 action point to do a search. So essentially, of those 3 objectives, flip them. The first and last objective that get flipped are worth 1 point. The second objective that gets flipped is worth 2 points. And once you flip 3 objectives, whichever was that third objective flipped becomes the actual thing that you want to take out. So we're going searching. And hey, it's, as I always say, it's the last place that you look, because why would you look further if you've already found it? And then now it's an objective that you can pick up and run away with and score points. And again, hey, max 6, because that's the way the game is played. Last thing you have is actually just trying to kill models on the other side. So I'm looking for my card related to this. I'll talk about the deck as well. I do think the deck is actually pretty good. I do think it's actually helpful. It gives you the critical operations. There's 9 of them. If you have some of the terrain, they actually just gave you prescribed maps. They tell you, hey, for that terrain, which one is this one for? This is the kill zone Beta Decima. So actually, I can show you the one that we played. We played 4. So this is the map that we ended up playing. So it shows us, hey, that's where you're going to place those objectives. tells you, hey, the long terrain, short terrain, and all of that. This is the one that has the pillar and the I can maybe show a picture. Actually, I can probably show a picture right now. But effectively, it has a bunch of gantries rather than a lot of other pieces. So you're putting together a whole bunch of gantries for this one. We'll get into one of the negatives. Ah, there it is. So let me get to where they show it. It's this one. So it's the one with the various gantries and all of that. And then you have the little towery piece there in the middle. Honestly, the terrain is actually really great, but so they give you that, hey, you just want to go with prescribed, hey, you can put it together this way, feel free. I enjoyed that. I thought that was a useful way to do it, because the game is too new for me to know what's fair in terms of terrain. They say don't make it exactly equal, but I don't know if what I pick is fair. So this is a good way to put that together. So they give you that. They give you a round break, or a way to put the game together. They give you all your tac op cards, your critical operations. They give you cards related to what you pick for more points. So once you have everything figured out, you are going to pick either the critical, the tactical, or the destroying each other as your main thing, primary, that you're doing. So we can select different ones. This is a hidden selection, revealed at the end of the game. And normally, each of them is worth up to 6 points. So you can get up to 6 points for destroying your enemy, up to 6 points for completing this tactical objective related to what your army does well, and up to 6 points related to doing this critical objective, the main mission, if you want to think about it that way. But whichever one that you pick for that primary, as you're calling it, that one, therefore, is worth more points. You can get an extra half as many points that you did. That means normally the game is out of 18. You can get an extra 3 on one of those, so out of 21. Last one is the kill card. I believe they show this as well, but effectively what you do is you take a look at how much is in your opponent's force and how many of them did you destroy. That tells you how many points you can get. So notice the max number of points is 5, but as it says at the top, if you have if you've destroyed more models than your opponent, you get the extra. That's how you get to the 6. So for both of us, we had 6 models. So hey, when we destroy 1, you get 1 point. 2 is 2 points. When you destroy 4, that's how you get the 3 points, and so on. So all of that put together means that you have a wide variety of what it is that you're trying to do. What I'm trying to do has some differences than what you're trying to do, unless we play the same type of force where we both could pull the same type of card and we happen to play the same card. But I think it adds a nice variety to what you're doing between 9 missions and 1 tactical out of these different sets and trying to kill each other. That adds for a lot of variability to the game. So I think that's a really good thing as well. Again, I want to go through in a moment some of the bad, but I want to preface something first. I want to preface that, 1, I had a lot of fun. Other people who were thumbing through it were having a lot of fun as well. We enjoyed that. We are starting to get some games. We're starting to talk about how, I don't know if we're going to run it as a league, because they didn't really give us rules in terms of like campaign, but maybe as a league, or just we're going to be playing it on some Friday nights and Sundays for sure. I know a variety of other stores. They're running it on some Saturday. There's a store I know that's running some stuff tomorrow and all that kind of stuff. It's all over the place. Like, I know about 5 or 6 game stores around me, and between Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and like a random day during the week, you could find Kill Team at any one of those points. I know like 3 places that are all doing it on Sunday and everything like that. So everything I'm about to say after this doesn't take anything away from the game. It's a great game. I will, at the end of this, talk a little bit about why, if this game isn't for you, why it may not be for you, but we'll go through that. So let's go through some of the less good things about this. So some of the bad things. First of all, the rulebook. It is very nice. I have a hardcover book because I got this version because it comes with tokens, because I had no tokens for this game. Love it. The actual way they put together the rules is honestly pretty bad. So if you looked in the app, they gave you the light rules, and the light rules went together the way a rules book or rules document should be written. Here's a few examples, but here's the biggest grievance to me. And let me find a sort of page to talk about it. Here we go. Okay, so this is about page 4 in terms of the rules. We're looking through and they're talking about actions like, oh, reposition, all of that. Okay, that's great. hey, but reposition, you can't do a reposition action and get into someone's engagement range, or if you're engaged with someone. Cool. Dash, oh, you can't do it if you're engaged with someone. Oh, charge, you have to end engagement with someone. All this sort of things. So that is on page 41. And then page 46 is where they tell you what engagement means. Okay, I play 40K. I understand what engagement probably is. It's probably 1 inch, but they talk about it. And for the first like 6-7 pages I'm reading through, I'm hearing them talk about engagement, saying, did I miss it? Did I miss where they said what that was? Did I miss where they talked about that? Because I also play Sigmar, and Sigmar's 3 inches. So, and at one point in 40K, you had to get within half an inch and stuff like that. Half an inch of someone who's in half an inch and all this kind of stuff. So I didn't want to go in with preconceived notions. I didn't want to say that a 40K brain is just going to sit and follow the same idea. That gets you into trouble a lot of games when they change things, even if ever so slightly. But they didn't tell me what any of that was. They talk about cover. Oh, yeah, here's what, unless they have cover. Oh, yeah, so if someone is, sorry, I just want to make sure I'm using the correct terms, concealed. So there's 2 types of actions. You can engage, you are active or concealed. If you're concealed and you have cover, you're not a valid target. Cool, they said on the first page of the rules, on like page 39. They talk about cover in some other spots. Hey, when you're shooting targets, oh, cover or not, all of that. They talk, no, not there, they don't do it. They talk all about that. And then it is on page 47, so 5-6 pages later, where they tell you what cover is. And specifically, the way that you do cover in this is a bit different than if you hadn't really played before the way they do this. They show you in their various pictures that the way that cover works for all these sorts of things is that you have to be within 1 inch of the terrain thing, of the terrain piece. Your opponent has to be outside of 2 inches of you. I think they showed that in the 4th picture. They have to be outside of 2 inches of you. And if I'm going to shoot you, I pick any spot on my base and draw it to any spot long ways across your base. So when I take a look at you, I'm drawing from any spot on my base to the far ends on yours. And if any of that touches terrain that you're within 1 inch of, and I'm outside of 2 inches of you, you get cover. But I can pick any spot. So if I were standing here, maybe if I pick this side, I would cover the terrain. But if I'm on this side, now I don't. Okay, so you can do that. Okay, but when you were going to talk about what cover is, why didn't you give that to me first? I read this in order, and honestly, no. You start at page 46, read the key principles so you understand what they're talking about, then go back. Because, okay, cover, yeah, gotta be within 1 inch, all of that, and they show it. Yeah, and then you get to intervening. Okay, something is intervening if you can draw those lines in any way and something goes through a terrain feature. Okay, hey, so covered intervening, that makes sense. I can get that. Obscured. Okay, intervening has to be the right type of terrain, but now you have to be outside of 2 inches. Sorry, 1 inch. My apologies. 1 inch, not 2 inches. Sorry. So you have to be outside of 1 inch of that terrain. So it needs to be heavy terrain, needs to be something big and bulky like a building. But if I'm standing next to the building, which theoretically I'm using the building for cover, yes, but I'm not going to get obscured from it. And I'm not going to get obscured from it because you can shoot me really well when I guess, look out. The idea is if there's something between you that I'm not near, that it's going to be blocking it more because you have a harder time, I guess, timing your shots to me or something like that. But, we both have to be outside of 1 inch. If you're standing next to the thing, you're not obscured. Or if I'm standing next to it, not obscured. But if it's big enough in between us, as they show in the last picture here, if there's enough space between us, then, hell, they're still trained? Yeah, we're obscured. But they've already talked about it multiple times, and now only here are they explaining it to me. So I think the ordering in this book is exactly backwards. I think there's some other confusing spots as well, and I think things that they don't necessarily do well. Surprise, surprise. The way they talk about ploys and they talk about strategic gambits and all. A strategic gambit is something you do during the strategy phase. So you have strategy, fight phase, essentially that back and forth for all intents and purposes. everything you do in the strategic phase is strategic gambit, but many of them are ploys, and ploys require to use a CP, but not everything is a ploy. So it's kind of like, all squares are rectangles, not all rectangles are squares. I so far haven't seen a gambit that's not, other than the start of the game one where you select which of your missions is going to be the one that scores you extra. Maybe that's the only one. I don't know. There might be others. That I think is all fine. There's a picture in here when they talk about measuring to an objective, which they show it, that very similar picture on all these things, and talk about line of sight, that you have it and all of that. And then when they talk about it in that other piece, you don't. It's because of the terrain feature that they showed in between. But essentially, they showed this thing, and when we look at our models, you can see each other, and then they put a token, now I can't see you. But off of that, I probably still can. So represent it differently. Effectively, when you are looking at an objective, you are in control range if you're within an inch and unobstructed. So you can actually get to it. You can see it. You have line of sight. It's not blocked by a wall or something. They don't really show that well. So another bad, clarity. For as short as these rules were, once I was done them, just to be sure to clear about this, finished the game, came home, reread the rules again. I definitely feel more comfortable with them, but they're a bit of a slog to get through. They really were, I found. As someone who was reasonably new to Kill Team, I found it not necessarily impenetrable, but not a very friendly way to put the rules together. Again, part of it is the way they structured it. Part of it is the way that they talk about it. Part of it is, okay, here's some pictures. Okay, if you're playing Volcus, Kill Team Volcus, here's exactly what it has. Here's where you're supposed to put it together, all of that. I wasn't aware in the beginning that the different boards and all have particular names and particular styles and all of that. And they kind of set it up. Oh, Gallo Dark. Oh, that's the one that's essentially looks like inside a Space Hulk. Okay, well, if you have that, there's some special rules for that. How to know if a hatch is open or closed and all of that. And so if you're going to do that, also, when we show you the setup, you better be using our terrain for it, and you're going to get some special actions. You're getting even more rules. What we played that Beta Decima. The big thing on that, when you take a look at the board, there's some brown parts on the board, and that's supposed to be hazardous materials, and you have sort of this fog coming up from it. And when all that fog comes up, you can't see through more than 4 inches. And we completely forgot about that for like half the game. So it's I would say a little bit tough in terms of clarity. This also rolls into the other point I was talking about, and that's intuitive. I did not find the game very intuitive at the start. Now, maybe when I play more of it, I don't know if I will understand it better. I don't know if that means it's more intuitive, or I've just started to learn the way in which it works. So things that are a little bit odd at first. And remember, I play a wide variety of games. I'm used to different types of games, and maybe it's just because what they're doing here is not things that GW normally does in their games. But when you take a look at the gantries that they have for these, the top of the gantry, as opposed to the side, the top, the gantry floor, and then the gantry pillars. The top of the floor is essentially accessible, so you can walk on it, and a vantage point. Part of being a vantage point means I don't count the thing I'm on when I'm looking for line of sight. So I'm standing on this solid object, but I guess the idea is it's much more of like a grating or all, and I can shoot straight down. I can shoot around it. No problem there. But the pillar, you can't. Okay, that's fine. But that means I can see through the gantry I'm on. But if you're partially blocked by a floor of another spot, then I cannot. Okay, that's fine. And what we found, again, I find it makes sense to me now. What we find in terms of a difficulty was the player next to us, there was another person playing nearby, and I had to ask him certain questions because I realized I didn't fully get the way in which it was supposed to work. Or I had read it, I know I had absorbed it, but something about it I didn't like. And I guess because I found it very not intuitive. When I think of, say, MCP, in MCP, your height, compare height to thing you're looking at, it is taller than you, you don't see anything. You on top of a thing, you count that extra height. Here it was, okay, if to have cover, you have to be with 1 inch partially blocking. Cool. If I'm up on a vantage point and you're lower than me, I don't actually have cover, but I treat the ability kind of like I do. Similar things if I'm shooting down. Well, if I'm shooting down and you are in cover, well, now you're kind of not because I'm at a higher vantage point and all well and good. But it takes a lot to kind of, I think, put all that together. At least for me, we were finding a little bit difficulties. And again, I don't know. Maybe everyone's better at this than I am. But as someone who wasn't used to the game and has played a variety of other games, I was having a hard time putting together exactly what was happening. Last thing, as sort of a negative, and you can call this a negative or positive, it's really up to you. 40K is known as having a lot of moving pieces. Sigmar, a decent amount of moving pieces. I think this has more. I do really, really like the way they put the mission structure together, that you're essentially putting 3 things together. But that is a thing to keep in mind. Buying equipment. You are going to buy equipment. Hey, that's a really cool way to differentiate your teams and things you want. But that's another thing you have to keep in mind. I think having the cards, or if not, printing something out is absolutely necessary, because you will forget things that you have. Because you have your base rules, you have those special rules, you have faction rules, you have army rules, all this sort of stuff put together. I found it to be... So I played the Thousand Suns in 40K like some weeks ago. And I would say within 10 minutes, I had figured out what I was doing. I understood what I was doing. Doesn't mean I always made the right choice, but I understood what I was doing. I understood the premise. I understood the way to put it all together. I understood the concept of what I should do. I think it was by finally the end of the game where I feel I have a handle on what I'm doing. Part of it is misreading things. I didn't realize that, like I said, my rubrics have 2-up saves. I kind of missed that fact. But even if I caught it, there's a lot of other little things. So I find this game to be rather dense. I think when they put out the light rules, I think if you are really brand new to this or just some war games in general, yeah, go with the light rules, then expand out. Don't try to do it all at once because it's going to get pretty heavy. But what I will say, yes, I'm going to play a bunch more of this. We're going to be recording some games about this. I don't know if the other guys are, if it's just me with some other people or exactly what. I do want to do a how to play. I want to break it down, hopefully break it down a couple different parts to explain some things, to try to make it even just a little bit more. I know I like to learn by kind of watching and listening. I don't mind reading. I'm fine with reading, but I do like that as well because it gives me something. I'm going to do that as well. So would I say to play this game? If you like 40K setting, and especially if you don't want to paint 50, 60 models or more, depending on faction, then yeah, I think it will scratch enough of your itch. What's also really good about this, so what we did, at least in the one store, I know some other stores were doing as well, people just picked up things they don't normally have. I played Thousand Suns because some friends of mine had it, so I could try it out and see what I think. But I made my Kill Team Thousand Suns because I thought that would be cool. I've never painted Thousand Suns before. I never played them before. I thought that'd be a lot of fun. I know a lot of us, we said, hey, you know what? The joy of this is we can pick up a box, especially if it's a boxed faction, where you can pick up a box, you can play this game with stuff that you don't normally play. You know, I was going back and forth. I might have went with some, I forget, Hearthkin, whatever they call it for that particular bit. Hearthkin Jägeris for the Leagues of Votann. I was going back and forth on them because I'm not going to play full Votann army. I don't have enough interest in them. I don't really like what they do there. But hey, painting up a couple of those guys, it's got a nice ring to it. So I think this is a great way if you want to experiment, go into another faction ever so slightly, try out some fun stuff. I think it's a great way to do it. I think this is the sort of thing where if you want to branch out and go with a few, you easily could. I think they do in this give you some co-op missions and some multiplayer missions. So if you're trying to get some friends in, I think that's a really great way to get a couple people playing to really put this together well. So Overall, I'm a big fan of the game. For people it may not be, if you want reasonably simple games, if you are the type who would be bothered by, like I said, models going down really quickly, you don't want to get attached to anything. Every model, you said we were Space Marines and we were losing things left and right. And that, I mean, you also have to like skirmish games and all of that. But I think if you're watching this, or if you have any interest in 40K related stuff, I think Kill Team is a great way to get into 40K or play some 40K stuff at a small scale. And then if you decide you want to do more, okay, well, now maybe you go pick up a combat patrol and you can play low level 40K, and then you go from there. Especially if you just want to paint some models of another faction. You want to paint 10 Eldar? Hey, cool. It's a great way to paint 10 Eldar and do something with it. Otherwise, you'd have to go paint and spend lots of money painting lots and lots of Eldar. No, instead, get a box. So, all right, that's a brief thought on this. Overall positive, couple big issues. Rulebook's written like garbage, but that's fine. And there's issues. There's other things when we look through that are not clear, and kind of waiting for an FAQ to discuss some of those. Or at least it's not clear to me now. Maybe if I read it 3 or 4 more times. All right, so that'll do it for this particular video. You will see some more stuff from Kill Team. I'll show off my Kill Team. I said I want to do some how to play videos as well. I might be trying to record some of those later on Saturday once I wake back up. But we'll see exactly all of that. If not, hopefully you'll start getting some battle reports in about another week or so related to all of this. For other things on the channel, I'm going to be putting out some Conquest stuff, especially because now we know we feel in about 10 days we should be getting the updates. Going to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, once they come out, tons of stuff about those. Should be getting back to 30K, and my hope is, again, to get to this and other battle reports in the not-too-distant future. All right, well, on behalf of everyone at the show, then, has a good hobbying. It's a great gaming.